Welcome to the Eventful Podcast, where real conversations meet big ideas.
This is where the real journey gets shared.
It's honest,
It's inspiring.
and it's always eventful.
So, the next guest that we have on our podcast is someone that I go way back with. We can go into this story a little bit, but I'd love to introduce you to Casie Jordan, who's the SVP of Revenue Platforms at Liftoff. Casie, do you want to just give a little intro about yourself, and then we can do a quick story about maybe how we met?
Sure. Well, first, thank you guys for inviting me. I feel super honored to be a guest. You guys are two powerhouses in the industry. Before the podcast, we were talking about how busy everyone is. I don't know if there's anyone quite as busy as you two guys. So appreciate you taking the time to interview me. I am in the ad tech world. I do work at Liftoff, about a 650 person company, and we do mobile marketing for apps and brands who want to find their users in the app world. I am based in New Jersey, in Princeton, New Jersey. I moved out here a couple of years ago, but prior to that, I lived in either Manhattan or Brooklyn for about 20 years. I also went to school in the city as well. I went to Fordham University in the Bronx. So very much been an East Coast person my entire life, but have always worked for companies that were based on the West Coast. Have amassed a lot of frequent flyer miles. And Meredith and I met when we both worked at Twitter. Pre-COVID, when it was very common to be sitting at your desk Monday through Friday from 8 to 7. And so we logged a lot of hours together, both working on the business, planning events, and also, of course, socializing across our desks.
I remember those days vividly. That was actually in the beginning, I would say, of my events career. So we go way back. And then I know prior to that, were you at Adobe, Casie?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So kind of I can give you a little bit about the journey from the beginning. So I was raised by two public school teachers as an only child, which basically meant I was born into being a student and born into a world of writing thank you notes and following rules like they were the gospel. I wasn't always the loudest kid in the room, but I paid a lot of attention. That's something that both my parents as teachers really instilled in me, which was listen. My mom used to say that I was always, even as like a very young child, like 3 or 4, I was kind of like staring and watching and observing. And I think that's something that ended up serving me well in a space as unpredictable as advertising technology. Fast forward a little bit, I won't take you like through my whole life story from the time I was 3, but I did start out in traditional publishing, and that really quickly became digital publishing. And then that quickly became ad monetization. Like, how do we actually take the publishing world and make money from it? So I spent some time over at MySpace, which was a cool thing to be able to tell people, like, I'm in the MySpace office. Early on in my career, kind of working for like a very young, hip tech company, kind of got hooked on that sort of environment. From there, I moved into the data management platform world. So not as sexy as MySpace, but specifically at a really small company called Demdex. It was a startup where there was about 20 of us. And that was a great way for me to get experience working in a really small, agile environment where you end up kind of doing 6 or 7 jobs. And that became Adobe's audience manager platform. So Adobe acquired us, and that was through an acquisition. So we went from a 20-person company to like a 15,000 person company. So I got some experience there figuring out what is it like to work at, in a big corporate environment, managing people. You kind of become a little bit of a professional manager when you're in that environment. And I was over there for about 4 years, which was really a delight. It was a nice place to work with like genuinely kind and smart people. But after that, I got the itch to work at a cool company again. That's when I ended up at Twitter, specifically in the MoPub business unit, which is where Meredith and I met. And to kind of get us to present day, I spent about 8 years at Twitter, and I genuinely loved it. The people at Twitter were some of the best people that I've ever worked with. And we were working on a product that I think gave a voice to people around the world who didn't always have one. We call this Twitter 1.0. So not the Twitter that it is today, but it felt like we were really building something that actually mattered in the world. And really kind of powering that public conversation. Yeah, Meredith and I spent a whole lot of time together sitting at our desks. For me, at around 2022, that journey ended when a company called AppLovin bought the business unit that I worked on, and the technology was ultimately shut down. So at the risk of sounding a little dramatic, that journey kind of ended. It was a little bit of a traumatic thing to happen. Like, you pour nearly a decade of your life into something you really believe in, and then suddenly it's gone. And interestingly enough, a little bit of tech history, a couple weeks after that, Elon Musk took over Twitter. And so I think it's safe to say it's a very different place now. Quite sure it's one to say that where I'd be proud to work at today, but what I am proud of is where I do work today and where I am now, which is at Liftoff. Like I said, it's about a 650 person company. So we're medium sized, I would say, and we're an AI powered growth platform still in the ad tech ecosystem. And we help publishers make great content and help advertisers reach their audiences. And that's where I lead the revenue platforms team, which includes our programmatic exchange, business marketing, our app intelligence platform, and our technical services team.
So you're managing a lot of people, it sounds like.
There's people that get managed.
Yeah.
I have never met anybody who's worked at MySpace.
Yeah.
That is so
I
interesting.
found that out about you too. I didn't know that.
Like, that's OG, like before Facebook. I mean, so what was that like? Like, what
I
was
may be dating myself a little bit there. And actually, one of your previous guests, Janae Redmond, her husband also worked at MySpace. So a little bit of so it was one of those things where you felt like, I'm working on something that's cool. I'm working on something where if I were to go on a date or something and I tell them I work at MySpace, they're like, wow, that's cool. There were celebrities constantly in the office. It was a very casual setting, I would say also. So, by comparison, working somewhere at Adobe, there's a little bit more of a buttoned up environment, but yeah, at MySpace, there was an element of like, we all have to work hard and we have to get things done. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make revenue by selling and executing on advertising. But at the same time, parts of the company were putting on huge concerts, or they were teaching celebrities how to create their top 8 on their MySpace page. So I would say it was a very interesting time in tech history. So
Did you meet Tom?
I did meet Tom, and how I met Tom was that I sort of decided to make friends with Tom's executive assistant, Maria, who would sit outside his office. So that's something that I always advise people to just make friends with all of the executive assistants. It can tend to open doors.
I agree with that.
Oh, Casie, it was so interesting to hear about your journey and trajectory throughout your career path. So now that you are a leader and you lead so many people now and have so many responsibilities, what does strong leadership look like to you, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I think the answer has changed for me over time. So I used to think that it meant like knowing all of the answers and having, sort of a perfect path forward. But these days, I think for me, it's about asking better questions and listening longer and kind of knowing when to get out of the way. You may not know this from meeting with me, but I'm naturally an introvert. So early on, I thought I had to overcompensate, like drive harder, speak louder, fill every silence with some kind of proclamation. But I've learned really that presence can, beat volume, I guess you would say. So now I try really hard and I think intentionally about leading with like calmness, leading with clarity, and just leading with a certain amount of trust. I keep this on my desk. It fits backward and you can't see it. It says pause before reacting. And I have it right here just to remind myself that I don't necessarily have to jump in with the right answer all the time. And so, especially in the industry that I'm in, which is, all industries change really quickly, but I think particularly with mobile app advertising. We're kind of beholden to some of the big companies like Apple and Google and what they might do. So Apple might drop a bomb on your entire strategy and you kind of have to, okay, well, let's figure out what to do from here. So not really having like performative confidence, but like real earned quiet strength. And that's something that I've been trying to develop over the last couple of years.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, being leaders is Meredith and I have had to learn how to do it while building our own business. And it's a constant evolution and a constant day to day. There's obviously principles that can guide you and you can go by, but I would say every day, every year that passes by is definitely a growth opportunity for us and a learning experience for sure.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and for you guys, I mean, the buck stops with you guys. When you build your own business, nothing's rolling uphill any further. So it's, I think, even harder to keep that calmness and to keep that like quiet strength, because sometimes the answer is like, well, somebody has to do something and say something. So, and that's why I admire entrepreneurs and I admire folks like you guys and what you've done with your business. I always say, like, I'm never going to start my own thing. I'm kind of like a company girl, because there's an element of risk there that is, kudos to you guys for taking that on.
Thank you. There's definitely Meredith and I talk about it a lot. There's definitely some perks to, or a lot of perks compared to entrepreneurship of just working internally and having that security and knowing what you're going to be doing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it's there are definitely elements of that we miss, I think, for sure. So totally get that.
So I know you've built and scaled revenue teams at different growth stages. I'm curious to see, what are the most critical ingredients for doing that well?
Yes. I think so I'll start with kind of like an earlier stage. So early stage growth and early stage scaling is all about being athletic. So at Liftoff, our CEO, Jeremy, always is looking for, people he calls athletes that could run 100-meter dash. They could, do sort of the dressage on a horse. They could do a double back tuck on a balance beam. Like, people who could do all of those things and aren't afraid to actually be building and working on the engine mid-flight. Those are the people that then sort of an early to medium stage are the ones that are going to, I think feel brave enough to do the things that need to be done. But as you grow, you definitely need structure, real roles, very clean and clear incentives, clear swim lanes. I've done a racy chart or a swim lane in my day. But I think also you don't want to fall into like the pitfalls of leaders hiring specialists too early, because if you hire athletes and you get a group of athletes around you, they can take you really far. I've also learned kind of how important it is to protect people's focus too, because distraction can kind of be the enemy of growth. And I think that also comes along with giving people real ownership for things and like actual autonomy and not just like perceived autonomy, and giving them, space to run and space to sometimes make mistakes. When I'm doing career and like actual growth management with people that report to me, I always like to think about the things like, what are the areas that I can give to people where it's actually okay if they don't figure it out right away. It's okay if they fail, because that's how they're going to learn. That is where I always coach people to, as you get those things delegated to you, try to be the person who's solutions oriented. Maybe you don't know the answer, but be the person who is giving out those vibes of being solutions oriented, not as the person who's just raising objections without unlocking a path forward. And I think it's the difference between those kind of people. You see those people really advance in their career, where they're the ones that know, like, there's always a way. There's always a way forward. And that's something I really like about our culture at Liftoff. We operate with a ton of urgency all the time, which of course can be exhausting, but we've all kind of come together and like taken a blood oath and we're like, we're going to do this. And so we operate with urgency. We operate with a little bit of an edge. And one of the things that our leadership team is really vocal about, which is something that really resonates with me and I've found this to work at other places I've worked is to just try to be as comfortable as you can, operating in gray areas. Like nothing is ever going to be black and white. Like nothing will ever show up at your door in a neat little package. If it does, like God bless, take that. Take that to the bank, but there's always going to be some wall to climb. And what I really love and what I find, and I think Meredith, we had this at Twitter. We had a group of people who were just showing up every day and being like really vocal that they were taking personal responsibility to just figure it out and find a way through. And at Twitter, and we also had this at Liftoff, like every day we would just show up and we would encounter something that we'd never seen before. We hadn't personally done ourselves. And we're like, shoot, I don't know what the heck to do here. But we just kind of figured it out and every day, getting creative. And sometimes you have to scramble elegantly, of course, wearing a cute blazer, but just just show your leaders, show your managers, and show the people around you that you are down to figure it out. And like, there is always a way through.
Yeah, I love that. Elegantly scramble. I think that just defines our entire life, Meredith and my life at least. Yeah, that's really interesting. Just in we were already chatting about working internally versus owning your own business. And as you mentioned, you and Meredith used to work together internally. Meredith and I used to work together internally. And I think working at a startup where you just get it done and there are going to be problems every single day, and that something's going to come up every single day is different. And when you're with a team of people who are really smart and nimble and athletic, which I love that term. I've never heard that used in like the corporate world, but I love that way of describing it, because you have to adapt and just get it done and have a good attitude and not focus on the problem, but figure out the solution. And so working with Meredith internally before we started our business, it taught us so much about what a good team looks like and what it looks like to just get shit done and do it in a let's say an elegant way, because in the background we're scrambling 24/7 and we have to do the same thing with our clients now. So it was such a valuable experience for us to learn that and to see it in action before we started our own business.
Totally. And especially when you find those people that you can work with, like I love how you guys found each other. I have those people that I've worked with in the past and I worked with now. And you just know that you can almost exchange like a quick eye raise, and you guys have the same DNA of figuring out together, being solutions oriented, and you're dealing with clients like I'm dealing with clients on my side. You guys are dealing with your clients, and so there can be sticky situations, but if you surround yourself with the like-minded people that are going to, with just a glance, know what needs to happen, like that's when work can actually be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It also helps with when you're talking about career growth and hiring your team and coaching them and everything. We see it as either you have it or you don't. Even for our team and our employees, a lot of times there are problems, we don't even hear about them, which is exactly why we have a team, right? And that's exactly why our clients hire us, because, the bigger the problem, the higher it goes up to, it eventually makes it to Meredith and myself. But our team is taking care of things and being nimble and inventive along the way to just take care of things and get things done, right? And I think we don't even really see them as, even it comes up with running a business too. It's like, it's not really even a problem. It's just what happens every day with what we do, right? It's just life. Like it just comes up.
Yeah.
So
it's not a problem. It's just we're getting through the day in 15-minute increments, right?
exactly. It's just something that happened. It's not a problem.
And I like what you said about, you either have it or you don't. And I think when you think like, oh, they don't have it, one thing that I have learned, I used to be very binary about that. Like, oh, they don't have it, I'm going to write them off, I'm going to move on. But as a manager, I think there's little things you can do to see if like, maybe there is a potential there, or maybe you can dial really direct with someone and give them really direct feedback and let them know like, hey, I observed you did this or didn't do this. And the impact of that is that I lost trust in you. And so I would have expected you to do X, Y, and Z. And if you do that, like that gets you closer to having it. So I think there's an element where, when you encounter people that you think they don't have it, like the radical candor of giving people feedback and dialing direct, just letting them know what's up, I think, that can work too.
Totally. Absolutely agree with that. And we've learned that over the years as well. Learned it the hard way and the easy way, right? But
Yes.
eventually you learn it. So, on that same note, Casie, you've navigated change in a fast paced industry. And it sounds like over the years, even from your days at MySpace, you've probably navigated so much with what's happened with the industry. What's a challenge that taught you the most along the way?
This one is maybe a little bit more personal than work related. In 2023, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when you go through that kind of experience, it just like resets your entire system, all of it, like deadlines, tricks, like the email that I need to write. It makes you look at all of that in such a different light. And some of those things can, take a back seat to your health. Like life is all we have. And so when you go through something like that, I think it taught me two things. One, you have to advocate for yourself, like especially in the United States, with our healthcare system, like the default of doctors is to always kind of get you in and out the door and maybe go to the first solution for what they think. It's probably nothing. Before I got my breast cancer diagnosis, I heard from a radiologist, it's probably nothing. Like, we'll send you for a biopsy. And it did end up being something. So I think what I would say, my advice here is, it's adjacent to the work world, but all these things are happening while you're working, right? A year or so into my tenure at Liftoff, and I was trying to really build my brand at Liftoff, and I got this news. And so I think it taught me, like, if something feels off, speak up. And the second is like, nothing's more important than your health. I've always been someone that, does the 90-10 rule. Really, 90% of my time and attention and mental bandwidth is work, and 10% is personal, and the rest. And so I've been able to shift that a little bit, because you can't lead well if you are not well. And that sounds really obvious, but when you're the person who, especially as an only child and someone who felt like they always had to do everything for themselves their entire life, like from taking out the garbage to, getting the report out, like you're just the person who always handles it, it can really change you. So I think that going through that really hit me also, because I started to do more research about cancer and the different kinds of cancers, especially at our age, which I'm 42. I was diagnosed when I was 39. So that for breast cancer, that's technically considered young. And some of the stats are really astounding. So, like 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women in the US will be diagnosed with some form of cancer in their lifetime, according to the American Cancer Society. So that's about 40% of people overall. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but I think the thing that I try to do just in casual conversations with people, or even an interaction like this, is to just underscore how common it is, and how important like prevention and early detection is. So like if you've been putting off that doctor's appointment, like go to it. Of course, many of us are privileged to have health insurance, but there's also self checks that you can do as well. And so I think the experience overall made me a little bit more grounded, a little bit more of like, okay, I can kind of go with the flow. I don't have to get as upset and bummed out about something that happened at work, and maybe a little bit more of a generous leader to think about, like, everyone's going through something and you probably just don't know what it is. And so it also made me a little bit more permanently like allergic to BS. And that is the gift right there.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad to hear that you're okay.
Yes.
In the clear, I'm sure still getting your annual, probably more so.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you detect things early, like the idea is, the earlier the better, so you don't have to go through as much treatment. So I kind of had like the minimal treatment, which was good. And so that's why I'm like the poster child and ambassador for people just going to the doctor and getting those checkups.
Totally. I've been talking to Meredith. I'm going to get the Pronovo scan, the full body
Yes.
scan. My mom just got one. Apparently, it can detect
Mm-hmm.
stage 0 cancer or
Yeah.
something crazy.
Mm-hmm. So for pancreatic cancer and ovarian, those are the silent killers, because there's never any symptoms for those. So those are the kinds of tests that will detect it.
Wow. That's wild. I'm so glad you're okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that experience softened you, but also made you more discerning about, like, that's such an interesting dichotomy of
Yeah.
of going through, I guess, I don't know, what's traumatic experience, probably traumatic, but also like a waking up of sorts. I don't
Yeah,
know.
a little bit. I think that's like one time while at Twitter, I received a piece of feedback that like really bummed me out. I was like, for weeks, I was down in the dumps. The feedback was like, you're a strong executor, Casie. You are like the best of the best when it comes to getting things done. But they told me that I had sharp elbows, meaning like I was rubbing people the wrong way. So at first, I was super defensive. Well, yeah, like shit doesn't get done, if I'm going to be super soft. But over time, I realized like there's a few lessons that's buried in that comment. Two things can be true at the same time. You can get things done and you can do it in a way where you're bringing people along with you and not rubbing people the wrong way. And, influence matters just as much as output, I think. I mean, and it's also a little bit more complicated as a woman. Like people sometimes jump to like gendered labels. I don't know if you would say a man has sharp elbows. Maybe you would.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Assertive becomes aggressive, confident becomes bossy. It's a little frustrating, but it has gotten better. I think I've seen it get a lot better in the last 10 years. So that's good. This was more than a decade ago, but yeah, I think so. Most people probably wouldn't say that about me now because of some of these life things I've gone through. It's softened me a bit and given me a little bit more perspective and encouraged me to think about a situation and how to kind of outwit the situation and do so in a way that is human friendly and human first.
I love
I
that.
I love that we're getting a few Easter egg quotes in here.
I
I love
know.
this, which I've never heard. You're
These
so
are
wise.
great.
You said influence matters just as much as output, which is such a good way of framing that, because I'm someone who in the past and probably before starting our business and in the beginning, the first days of starting our business, I just kind of bulldoze and like to get things done as quickly as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Meredith and I we have a coach together, and we just took an
Mm.
Enneagram test to see our different types. And it was really interesting seeing how we each approach a problem and conversations and things like that. But efficiency is like my number one priority. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really great sometimes, but it also gets me into trouble sometimes. But I think I've learned with the people aspect, but I think I've learned throughout the years, and now we teach our team that the way you get things done is through other people, right? And
Absolutely.
sometimes we even have to coach our team on this, or sometimes chat with our clients about it, because if you're in a pinch and things are really stressful, it's like you have to remember that you have to influence these people to assist
Mm-hmm.
you and to get
Absolutely.
things done. And especially culturally, because we do events globally, and approaching things in the US with people when it's some sort of like quote unquote emergency situation at an
Mm-hmm.
event, you can't take the same approach with a vendor who's French, right? Or you can't take
Right.
the same
Oh,
approach.
don't you dare do that.
We did an event in a big event in Prague this year, and just trying to chat with their team and like the cultural things that came into it
Yeah.
was really interesting. Like you really just have to think about, to your point, what the other person is expecting, what they're going through, what
Yeah.
may appeal to them to assist you. So that's interesting. I really
Yeah.
haven't thought through that before.
You guys are in a tough spot too because, with events, like there's like a very specific outcome that's time boxed. Like this thing has start and end date and it has to go off. So I think, that makes it even more tough for you guys. So like I think you could still be direct and maybe soften the edges a little bit, but I think probably the biggest thing is like making sure that the room didn't just hear you, like they felt heard themselves too.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the event still needs to happen. So
Right.
yeah, it's tough, but
Right. And the two of us aren't pulling off the event by ourselves, right? Like it takes a
hmm
whole team. And so
yeah,
just in talking about having a team, or bringing together different companies and having vendors and a venue as a
yeah,
team, we even have to team up with the client, right?
right,
Because it's
absolutely.
like we're all in this together, and if
hmm
something goes wrong, it's on all of us, right? From
Yeah,
different
yeah,
aspects. So
yep.
that's so interesting. I love our little Easter egg quotes that we're getting from you.
So, what advice would you give to rising leaders, particularly women in sales, partnerships, or growth specific roles?
So I think in tech, specifically mobile app ad tech, there with females, you're always going to be in rooms where you're in the minority. That is just, that goes back to like, what is the gender composition of people who get computer science degrees and to just who go into the tech field, right? So you're always going to be in the minority. I think it's really up to the women leaders at the company. You don't want to put all the responsibility on them, but I take a personal responsibility at Liftoff to make sure that, I'm looking at who our next generation of female leaders could be, and kind of going through some of the playbook that I have had for myself. Going back to what we talked about before, things don't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be tied up with a bow, and focusing on clarity over perfection. I think particularly when it comes to speaking in public forums, being a really clear public speaker and someone who is using powerful language and language that's easily consumable by large groups of people, I think is something that I would recommend for females. Sometimes naturally females will have the tendency to kind of end the last part of their sentence with like a little bit of a question mark because you're kind of questioning yourself naturally a little bit. So to work on that, work on your public speaking. One thing that I have done over time is just to record myself and then watch it back and look for things that I can critique in my own speech and in the words that I'm using. Another one is like you could be a really powerful person if you are one of those people that understands the things that do matter and that don't matter, especially as you get further along in your career. A whole bunch of things are going to come at you all day long. Some of the things are going to matter and some of them don't. And knowing the difference between those two things and being able to focus on the things that actually do matter, I think can make you a really powerful leader and make you stand out. And then lastly, I think, finding your people within your own company, finding your people within your network of people that you've worked with in the past, or people maybe that you haven't worked with yet that you see have a presence on LinkedIn that you identify with, and kind of find those hype women for yourself and make sure that you're also a hype woman for others. So I think, your success doesn't have to necessarily look like anyone else's. I think you can carve out your own path. For me, it's been about being a leader that like shows up with my whole self. One of the things that have been pointed out to me is you're really vulnerable in the workplace setting. You tell personal stories to kind of bring people in and get people closer to you. Everybody at Liftoff knows that, I love the Olympics. I love Taylor Swift. You can see my background here. And like just kind of bringing your personal self to work will help you to kind of stand out from the pack.
That's really interesting because another podcast we're doing is with executive coach who happens to also be my sister. I'll throw that in. But she was talking a lot about that, like bringing your authentic self to leadership, because she gets a lot of clients that they're just very much like kind of how you were talking earlier in your career. Like they're full on execution, but then they're struggling with leading. And what was the quote she said, Jess?
What got you here might not get you there. So
Yeah.
it's like throughout the entire journey of being a leader, your career, whatever you're doing, you have to stop and take stock and realize, okay, maybe this worked in my last company, but it's not going to work in this new role. Or maybe for us with this approach works with this team member and it might not work with this other team member because everybody's different. And, I think to your point, at the end of the day, you have to have some humility and bring that personal aspect and personal touch in, because as we were talking about before, it's people. All of this is people. Every company is made up of, these days, who knows with AI and what'll happen, but these days it's made up of humans, and if you don't know how to navigate that aspect, it's like, what are you going to do? Like that's the bottom line.
Exactly. I think and you'll be able to get more done too. Like if the people around you feel a connection to you, they feel this invisible string from you to them because you've had a personal conversation with them before, you've checked in on them, when they were going through something, 6 weeks later, you need them to like cut a corner for you or approve something or help you get work done. Like they're going to, remember that about that invisible string of personal connection, and, you'll be able to get your job done faster. So it's not you're not being inauthentic. You can form these real relationships with people, and that can also help you get work done more quickly and
I
more
love that
efficiently.
Taylor Swift reference right there.
And
So
it
that's
was like, I was like, is someone going to pick up on it? Or, I didn't make that up. Yes, that's a reference.
I
Man, she's
definitely
a
did.
good writer. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the stuff she's written, like no one's going to do better than that. So
Yeah. I mean,
she's a
talk
great
about
writer.
breaking the mold for sure. Amazing. Well, Casie, as you know, this is the Eventful Podcast presented by Prospect Events. So every guest that comes on, we ask them to share the most or one eventful moment that has shaped your leadership style, perspective, or your approach to business in general. So what would that be for you?
So a couple years ago, I think it was 2018, my mom, as I mentioned, was a public school teacher, and she retired around 2018. And I went with her to her last day of school. So she's a first grade teacher. And I was thinking, like, oh, it's just going to be like a restful day. And it's the kid's last day of school. It's her last day after decades of teaching. Like, maybe she'll just hang out, we'll just kind of have like a chill day. And I observed her all day. And let me tell you, that woman was, reading. She read 5 books. She was wiping all the desks off with Windex. She was arranging things. Kids were going to the bathroom. They had a full pack schedule of games. Like, she just gave it her all till the very last second, till that bell rang. And I was like, wow, I guess that's where I came from. But it was just one of those things where I was just like, she didn't take the easy way out. It was like her last day after 30 years of teaching in a public school. Nobody was watching her. And then I thought, like, oh, the kids are watching her. Like, the first graders are watching her. And so she did it for them to make sure that like their last day of school was really impactful. And so I think about that all the time. Like, when other people are watching you, like people on my team, like I want to make sure like I'm giving it my all so that they have a good experience.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And setting the best example. I mean, talking about leading,
Totally.
like teachers
Yeah.
are the ultimate leaders.
Yeah.
That's
Oh my
really
God.
where it starts.
We think our jobs are hard, like, especially that day. Like, everyone needs to sharpen their pencil. Everyone has to go to the bathroom at once. Things are falling all over the place. Nobody's like, their lunch boxes everywhere. Like, that's a hard job. It's the hardest job.
It takes a very special person, obviously very necessary to have teachers, but
Yeah.
very special people.
Yes.
I don't know that in our day-to-day we even
Come
handle anything
close.
that's
Yeah.
as stressful.
I always say teachers, like a good teacher should be paid more than anyone.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's of
It's
course
agreed.
bad teachers, but the really good ones, like that have, I even think about my favorite teachers of all time. And I'm like, those people are angels.
You remember
and
them. Yeah.
I distinctly remember them. And yeah, they deserve more than anyone, but
They definitely make an impact. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like, as mentioned, we took a lot of wisdom away. We got a few impactful quotes for sure, which I had never heard before.
Yeah.
Did those just come from your brain, or have you heard those somewhere?
Most of them are from my brain, except for the Invisible String is definitely a Taylor Swift song title. Everything else is probably from my brain. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were great. I learned a lot. So thank you so much for joining us. And I know that Meredith always speaks so highly of you, and she's definitely told me some stories from back in the day.
about MoPub, not specific, like necessarily, but it was such a pleasure to have you. And I've always admired you in the space. And I learned a lot too. And I can see just even from, I mean, we worked together like a decade ago, but I can see how much you've grown. And I feel like people that get to be led by you are very lucky. So I'm very much admire you. And I'm so thrilled that you were able to be part of this. And it's always great to have familiar faces.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you guys having me on. And I'm really proud of you guys for doing this. Podcasts are a lot of work, I know. And I'm excited to hear the stories from other people that you guys are bringing out. So all good stuff.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Eventful Podcast. If you loved this episode, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and catch us on Instagram at the handle @theeventfulpod. See you next week.